Missouri is at the crossroads of the United States. Being located at the center of the nation puts us at an economic advantage over many states. Freight routinely crisscrosses Missouri, and thousands of travelers head into and out of our state every day. But there's a dark side to being a transportation hub. It's human trafficking. Because there are so many heavily traveled roads in our state, it's a perfect avenue for those who traffic in human beings, moving them quickly to avoid detection. Because our jobs take us to many locations across the state, we want you to help us combat this crime. In your daily duties, you may visit truck stops, fast food restaurants, or other places where victims may go undetected, or you may be working in a rural area where criminals hide victims. We want to arm you with information so you can help fight this crime. We hope you find this video helpful.
Human trafficking at its core is any exchange of goods for services that's usually started through force, fraud, or coercion. So if someone's over 18, we have to prove that they've been forced to do it, somebody has been fraudulent or coerced them. If they're under 18, it automatically is considered trafficking if it's any exchange of goods for services. We predominantly work with sex trafficking, so any type of sexual activity that they receive something in return is considered sex trafficking. We also have labor trafficking, which is the same concept of it's them providing some type of work with being forced into that without getting something reciprocated.
We're actively involved in combating human trafficking, and we work these type of cases underneath two programs within the FBI, the Violent Crimes Against Children Unit and the Civil Rights Unit. So the Violent Crimes Against Children Unit handles domestic commercial sex trafficking of juvenile victims. Those would be individuals underneath the age of 18. And our Civil Rights Unit handles domestic commercial sex trafficking of adult victims, labor trafficking of both adult and juvenile victims, and international sex trafficking of adult and juvenile victims. And we work these cases jointly with other local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies and national victim-based advocacy groups in task forces so that we can combine our resources and our expertise in this area.
Human trafficking is often unnoticed because we've, as a society, we've done a great job of showing one type of victimization, but it's so subtle in so many different ways. It's usually through some kind of psychological manipulation, through some kind of relationship, somebody they know. And that's just not what we're looking for. We're usually looking for the girls or the boys or the men or the women who are held against their will that no one sees. Where a lot of our girls that we've worked with, they've been basically victims hidden in our own backyard. Some of them were going to school. Some of them were participating in youth activities. The way that it was done was so subtle that people didn't know to look for it. They weren't watching for those types of different changes. So they were looking for these very extreme cases that we often see on TV, where a girl is snatched, taken against her will, no one knew what happened to her, and she's never found again. Where ours are, they're going to school, they're participating, they're setting up their dates in between things, and they're going back home, sometimes to a very loving family that didn't know that it was happening just because of busyness of life.
So how do you recognize the signs of human trafficking? Does a person show signs of being denied food, water, sleep, or medical care? Do they have bruises in different stages of healing? Do they appear disoriented or confused? Does a person show signs of mental or physical abuse? Is a person always with someone who they seem to defer to, or the other person always seems to take control? Does the person seem to be coached on what to say? Has the person become disconnected from family, friends, community groups, or houses of worship?
There are some circumstances or vulnerabilities that lead to a higher susceptibility to victimization and human trafficking. And some of those would include individuals that are runaways or homeless youth, individuals with past criminal activity, individuals involved in prior prostitution or sexualized work, individuals who are skeptical of law enforcement, individuals with immigration problems, individuals with drug problems, and individuals who were previous victims of abuse. So that kind of population might end up being victims of human trafficking based on circumstances in their life at any time.
MoDOT employees can help by just, we talk a lot about first responders and we forget that everyone in our community can potentially be a first responder. We're hearing stories about as Uber drivers were trained, they heard a conversation in their back seat and they were able to point law enforcement to a recovery. I think that's the same thing we can see with MoDOT in the sense of you are, when you're surveying, when you're traveling the different areas, when you're in areas that the rest of us may not even know exist, that you're seeing things and you're aware of things and you're reporting things, even if it's just a red flag. I think it's also important for us as we're just as adults that we have teenagers and kids in our lives that are vulnerable to exploitation. So being aware that one vulnerability can lead to a kid being exploited. So being aware of what is on the internet and what apps people are using, watching, like we said, what are kids doing when they're at McDonald's and what websites are they on, just being aware, I think is the best thing that a MoDOT employee could do.
If you're at a truck stop or a commuter lot or one of our rest areas and there's trucks flashing their headlights, are there girls going to and from the trucks? Are those girls going to another vehicle and coming back to the truck? Try to document the description of that vehicle. What's the license plate, the make, the model? Try to get a description of the driver. If safe to do so, take a picture. Do not rescue them. Call 911 or star 55.
If your internal red flag goes up, if you have some concerns that in your mind something doesn't look right, human trafficking, any other type of situation, reporting it to law enforcement is never a bad idea. Most people have a good radar for situations that don't look right or conversations that they overheard that just there's something to that really throws up their internal red flags. And being from law enforcement, I would rather have somebody reach out to me and give me information knowing that they're not certain, because people that call the FBI, they're not reporting. There are a lot of situations where they don't know specifically that there's a federal violation. As far as reporting, concerns of human trafficking, you can report it to local, state, and federal law enforcement. You can also report it to the Polaris Project. You can also report concerns of human trafficking to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, or whoever their contact might be in law enforcement to report that information.